would you do if you lived alone in a mobile forest with a mass killer trying to kill you? What would you do to stop the mass killer from breaking into your house? As well as, how can you scream for help or hear the killer when you're deaf and mute? These questions are addressed in the movie Hush. I like this movie because I thought it had an interesting storyline of a deaf and mute girl trying to find her way to survive. Today, I'll give you a description of the movie Hush, as well as my personal evaluation of the movie. Hush is a horror and thriller movie directed by Mike Flanagan. The two main characters of the movie is Maddie and Man. His name is unknown in the movie, who's also known as the killer. Other characters in the movie are Sarah, who is Maddie's neighbor, John, who is Sarah's boyfriend, and Max, who is Maddie's sister. Maddie lives alone, deep in the woods, and is independent. She's also deaf and mute, and only has one neighbor, whose name is Sarah, who comes and visits her often. A little bit about Maddie is that Maddie's a writer. She also has a writer's brain, so she can imagine how scenarios come around. One day, Sarah comes frantically knocking at Maddie's door, covered in blood, and gets shot by a crossbow arrow by a masked man. The masked man ends up finding out that Maddie is deaf and mute, so he realizes that he's not going to leave until he ends up killing Maddie. Maddie realizes that she has to deal with this situation alone without any sound, so she has to outsmart the killer by using her writer's brain. Maddie ends up coming up with 3 types of plans to end up getting rid of the killer, as well as trying to survive. One of this plan is to try to outrun him. She realizes this is a terrible idea since she ends up getting hurt badly in the movie, so the killer can just easily catch up to her. Second plan is that she could just hide, but since she ends up getting wounded, she can just bleed to death. And the third idea is that she could just kill the killer. And she ends up following this plan and ends up working. Spoiler alert. With this understanding of what Hush was about, I'd like to now focus on my evaluation of the movie. The story had an amazing plot of creating a thriller revolving around a deaf and mute target. The movie was intense since we were seeing the main character trying to escape a killer without making noise and not being able to hear the killer, as well as her own movements. And she has to use her other senses to try and escape. Hush does not revolve around jump scares or ghosts or anything like that, but it is a great killer story. And it can show how a woman can fight a man and kill a man, and how fast thinking is used in these types of situations. In the movie, there is blood involved, but it's not as gory as any other type of movie. It's also interesting to see the different ways that the movie has shown how to defend yourself if you end up in this type of situation. For example, stealing the killer's weapon and using it for your own defense and to kill the killer, as well as spraying bug spray in the killer's eyes as another form of pepper spray, as well as turning on the car horn as a way to distract the killer. I actually enjoyed how the actress learned sign language to be able to play the character, as well as not yelling when getting stabbed and having to act as she can't hear anything. So even if she hears the killer in the movie, she's not going to have to look at him. She has to pretend that she cannot hear the killer at all. The whole plot of the movie was unique, as well as it can actually leave some audiences to be quite paranoid, since some of them actually might live in places where it's in the middle of nowhere. So they can actually think that this can actually happen to them, as well as it can leave some influencers and celebrities paranoid since they end up not living in crowded areas. In conclusion, I have given you a brief description of the movie Hush, as well as my personal evaluation of the movie. Hush is a high intense movie with a unique plot that can catch different audiences, and this movie is definitely worth seeing. So next time, if you have a sleepover with your friends or family, you can just watch this movie. If the power ends up running out, there's a chance that the killer might have invited himself to the sleepover. If not, then you just forgot to pay your bills. Thank you.